Kerry from Living in Loveliness, and today I'm going to show you how to make the patchwork spool. In this first part of the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to cut each piece to construct the block to create that beautiful patchwork spool design. During the tutorial, I am going to use the rotating cutting mat. I'm also going to use the rotary cutter and the quilting ruler as well. Now you'll find the quilting ruler much easier to work with when you're cutting these, and I will talk you through where I'm placing the ruler onto the fabric to make these blocks nice and neat. If you open up your book, you'll notice inside, first of all, we're looking and working to create this beautiful block using the diagram as reference. And if you have a little look on the first page there, you'll see fabric 1, pink on the diagram. To make this super easy today, I'm going to work with the same colour fabric. So for the pink, I'm going to use a pink fabric. For the green, I'm going to use a floral, but features a green in that fabric. And for the blue parts of the block, I'm going to use a blue fabric. Now, when you're working with your ruler, we're looking at sizes like 7 and 7/8, 4 and 3/8. If you're new to this, it's definitely worth familiarising yourself with the markings on your ruler. So if we have a little look, first of all, that first size we're working with there is 7 and 7/8. If you have a little look on the ruler here, if I pop just a plain piece of paper in the background, and this will definitely make it easier, just using that welcome letter there. So we have your inch. Let's just get that nice and straight there for you to see. And we've got 1/8. So you've got all these tiny little markings on the ruler. 1, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and then we have your inch. So we'll bring the fabric, the pink fabric, to the cutting mat, and we'll start cutting these pieces. And that's really what we're focusing on the session today. So starting with the pink fabric, the first measurement, I'll just pop this to one side for now, we're going to cut one piece of fabric from the pink fabric, 7 and 7/8, and that is to yield 2 triangles. So 7 and 7/8, first of all, what we're going to do is square up that raw edge, that fabric. Now you can see here on the ruler, if you're working with one of our kits, because we've cut these already by rotary cutter, you'll notice that that bottom line there is already straight. So we're going to line the ruler up on that straight raw edge, place our hand onto the centre of the ruler, remove the blade and just trim away that excess fabric. Now to make this super easy, if we just place this, so we're not moving the rotary cutter, rotating cutting mat just yet, we're actually going to cut this 7 and 7/8. So let's place this in the bottom part of the ruler. So now I want to see the markings on my mat for this particular one. So we're actually starting from the 1 inch line. So I'm going to count across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we want 7/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Placing that ruler onto the fabric, so again using that bottom red marking on the ruler, we're aligning that with the raw edge of the fabric. And we're now going to bring that down, let's just redo that there, until we get to 7/8. So I know that this is straight on the left. Just reposition that slightly. That's straight on the line, 7 and 7/8. We are on the 1/8 inch line, but I've moved this across so I can see. So it is always worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 7/8 on those here because I've counted them across. Using my ruler, I'm going to do the same on the ruler. So looking for 7 and 7/8 on that ruler. And I can see on my markings here, I've got 7, I've counted down 7 little ones. Lining this up, and I'm now going to cut. Now I'm only going to cut just a little beyond that cut line. I'm then going to pivot the mat. So I'm getting this nice and straight. Let's just bring the fabric on so we're not losing any of this fabric because I'm rotating the mat. Pivoting the mat all the way around, and again we're going to use that 7 and 7/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and my 7/8 is there. And I can just double check that my ruler's long enough to allow me to place that onto the top and the bottom part of my rotating cutting mat. Again, just popping your hand on there to stabilise, and there is that first square. Now we want to yield 2 triangles, which simply means to cut in half. So I'm simply going to put the ruler, point to point, and cut this in half. There's my first 2 triangles. So what we'll start doing now is we'll start working through those measurements. So for B, it's telling me to cut 1 4 by 3/8 to yield 2 triangles. So again, now this time, let's just use that area there so we're not wasting any fabric. Because it's smaller, I've got a variety of rulers that I like working with. So I'm going to take a smaller ruler and I'm going to look for 4 3/8. So again, just get that paper to show you while we're working through those first ones. So 4 inches and 3/8. So 4, 1, 2, 3. So I know I'm working to that little red line there before the black dotted line, and the same on here. Once I've stopped to see where those lines are, I'm now resting that onto the fabric, lining up 4 3/8 and sliding this across, so that is now on 4 3/8. Just taking a moment to check that that is accurate. 4 3/8, 4 3/8, and I'm just going to cut just a little beyond, pivot the mat again, so this is coming to myself, and I am always cutting away from myself. Now I know I need to yield 2 triangles, so that's as easy as we did the first time, just placing the ruler point to point and cutting. So 4 3/8, there is my second part. They're my B pieces, and my C pieces here, so if I just bring this diagram, are these outer sashing pieces, and they're going to be 14 1/4 by 2 1/2, and I need 4 of those. So that means I'm going to use the longer ruler. Now what I want to do is to just trim away this excess piece of fabric here, as we don't want any waste. We can pop that in our stash. There we go. Placing that fabric so it's pointing away from myself. And here what we've got now is we're doing 14 1/4 by 2 1/2, and I need 4 of those. So to get 2, I'm going to use 14 1/2 on the bottom, and I can cut 2 at a time. So 14 1/2 by 5, that's going to give me 2. Just cut along there one more time, just a little bit further than the fabric. Pivoting the mat, let's just move that over so I've got a little bit more space to play there. It's a little bit tight. So not moving that fabric, just lining that back up here. 14 1/2, I realise I'm at a diagonal, which I tend to find is easier for myself. Cutting across the top, so we're not wasting any of this fabric. As I bring this back around, I'm now going to bring this back onto the 2 1/2 inch line, and that's giving me 2 of those pieces of sashing. So 1, 2, a tiny little thread there. So we've got 1, 2 pieces of sashing. Let's do 2 more. So again, just bringing this onto the mat. There we go. I think I said 14 1/2 a moment ago, just to confirm it's actually 14 1/4, but you've got these measurements in your booklet anyway. So pushing away a little bit further than the actual fabric, keeping that mat nice and straight and the ruler on top, cutting, getting rid of that excess fabric, bringing that ruler back, and again 2 1/2 inches. So we now have our 4 sashing pieces. So that is all of our pink pieces cut together. We now have our A, B and G pieces from the pink. So all of that pink now will go into the scrap bundle. From the green fabric, so let's just have a closer look at these. We've now got the E and the Hay peaches to do. Now already, you'll notice just that we cut the squares, and that was to yield 2 triangles. Hello, please accept my apologies. It looks like the tutorial timed out, which means I went ahead and continued to cut all of the other pieces for this step-by-step demonstration. So to keep in line with the colours in the book, as I mentioned right at the beginning of the original tutorial, we will be keeping green fabric. This won't be the fabric that I use for the sew along. So I'll be using the green fabric for the floral parts on the front of the cushion, and also for fabric 2 green on the diagram. And then I'll be using the blue fabric for the C and D pieces, and that is fabric 3 in the tutorial. So let's get started with that green fabric. So your green pieces, these are to yield your triangles for your E pieces and those cornerstone pieces for the H piece. So first of all, for E, we're going to cut 3 4 3/4 inch squares to make 6 triangles, or to yield 6 triangles. So let's just make a little bit of space on the table there and bring that green fabric back into position. So that measurement, just to confirm, is 4 3/8. And we're going to do 3 of those. So again, as I did with the previous fabrics, I have squared up the fabric already. If your fabric isn't square, and by square I simply mean when you're looking at your ruler, just take any one of those red lines. Let's go for 4 by 4. Just always check here, are those fabrics square and in line with a ruler? If not, at this point you need to trim those. As mine are, we're going for 4 3/8. So we'll just double check that one more time. Yes, that's correct. So 4 3/8 and 4 3/8. So releasing the blade, cutting along just a little bit further than that fabric. And as I pivot the mat towards me again, always pushing that rotary cutter away from me, and that's the first square. Now we are going to do 3 of those, so I'll go ahead and just repeat that. So 4 3/8. Now do remember what I said earlier on in the tutorial, the more confident you become with cutting, you'll be able to add those measurements and cut these all at once. So last time 4 3/8. Now I'm moving quite quickly through the cutting, so I haven't covered that blade up, but again you could certainly do that each time you're moving. So there's those 3 squares to yield our 6 triangles. So just placing these onto the cutting mat, and 1, let's do 2. So corner to corner, cutting along those fabrics, and that last one to give us those 6 triangles from the green fabric, which are going to make your E pieces. Now the next measurement that we've got on here is for the cornerstones on the cushion block. And these ones, let's have a little look, are 2.5 by 2.5. And we need to cut 4 of those. So this is a nice easy measurement to be working with. Just 2.5 by 2.5. And we want 4 of those. So if we just take, let's cut this all together. Let's add those up because it's a nice easy measurement. Let's just square this bottom off here. So just getting rid of that slither of fabric there. And we know we need 4. So what we're going to do is cut a 5 by 5 inch square, lining that up at the bottom, 5 on the left, 5 on the right. A little bit further along as we have done with all the fabrics. Cutting off that excess fabric there. As we bring this down now to our 2.5 inch line, So resting this on 5 by 2.5 inches, cutting across. And we'll leave the ruler there. In fact, we're going to move the ruler. So let's move the ruler now. As we place this onto the mat on the 2.5 inch line, that's going to give us those 4 cornerstones, and that's our 4 2.5 inch squares. And that's all we have to cut from the green fabric. So let's have a little look there at that blue fabric. So the blue fabric is the blue on the diagram, keeping this nice and easy. Now, first of all, we're going to cut the C pieces, and that is 4 3/8, 2 of those, to yield our 2 triangles here. So let's take that blue fabric. This might get lost in the mat actually, but 4 3/8, so the same measurement that we've been using, and we'll do 1 square at a time. So 4 3/8 to the left and 4 3/8 to the bottom. A little bit further past that line, and let's cut. That's going to give us 1 square. Let's bring that back. So the more confident you get with your cutting, the easier and the faster that you can cut your blocks. But while we're learning, let's keep this nice and slow. So taking that back, pivoting your fabric, cutting your excess. And from the blue, we need 4 triangles. So we'll place both of these on the mat and cut these in half, point to point. That's 2. And let's just cut that last one to give us those next 2. So we've got our 4 triangles there, which is our E pieces. Sorry, our C pieces. I've skipped ahead. Now the last measurement that we've got to cut for the top of the block from the blue fabric is your 4 by 4 inch squares. These are your D pieces. So let's place this blue back out onto the table. Nice easy maths. We want to do 2 at a time. So we'll place that on the 4 inch line to the left and the 8 inch line on the bottom. Cutting a little further beyond the line as we have done on all of our projects. Cutting on that 4 inch line. Let's turn that ruler around now, just check that we're straight, 4 by 4. Cutting those 2 squares, we're still attached there. Let's not pull because we don't want any pulls in our fabric. So that's our 2 4 by 4 inch squares. We've got 2 more squares left to cut to complete the cutting for our block. So the same steps as we did to create those other 2 squares, 4 inches by 8. Cutting a little further beyond that line, pivoting our mat, and let's move the ruler this time. 4 by 4 inches. Once, sliding that ruler along there and cutting to create that next fabric. So we've now cut all of our green and blue pieces. We've got all of the pink pieces from the previous tutorial. This now means we are ready to construct our block. What I'll do is post a photo into the Facebook group for you to see all the pieces placed out as they are in your booklet. And it's worth just doing these. Now for ease, for those of you, especially those of you that are new to quilting, or patchwork certainly, I will put a picture of mine in so you can see. For now, they won't all rest in position because we've got your seam allowance on there. The only pieces you have left to cut are some nice easy pieces here, and this is from your plain white, and this is to make the back for the cushion. So the back part of the cushion is actually going to sit on the inside of the cushion behind this panel. So if you want to do any quilting, you can do. I would recommend using some batting in there as well, although those steps aren't in the booklet. But more importantly, it's to line the back of the block to make sure that when you're putting your cushion in and out of the panel, that you're protecting those seams. Now there are 2 more squares to cut before we finish our tutorial. Almost forgot those. They're the F pieces. And again, to do that, they're 4 3/8, 4 3/8. And that's the same measurement here as we've done there just a moment ago with the blue. You'll then need to cut your two 18.5-inch pieces by 13.5, and these are to make your envelope backs. I look forward to seeing you for the sew along. If you have any problems with your cutting or any questions about the measuring, then do tag me in the group, and I'll see you for part 2, the sew along to make that cushion front. Thank you ever so much for joining me and for your patience, especially because we needed to record this second part of the tutorial for your block. I'll sew with you soon. Bye for now.